If you're an OG fight fan, you're going to get up for a fight like this. We have Michael Johnson taking on Clay the Carpenter Guida. Matt, I remember when we got into MMA, 2008, 2009, Clay Guida was at the height of his powers. He beat Anthony Pettis, who was coming in from WEC as a champ, and he stole all that thunder away from him. And since then, it's been a mixed bag. But Clay Guida at 39 years old is still hanging out, still putting on halfway competitive fights. And he's one of those guys that, listen, you don't want to turn the TV off if Clay Guida's making the walk. He's always doing something. He's bouncing around. His hair's going everywhere. He loves the game. He is taking on a guy who might not be 40, but all of a sudden, he's a man.
Oh, overnight he became one.
Because Michael Johnson isn't the menace anymore. I'll put the picture up. He put a thoughtful post up on Instagram. We're getting rid of the menace nickname. It took 3 losses and 35 pro fights to get rid of the nickname the menace. And Matt, for people that don't know Michael Johnson, well, he starched Dustin Poirier. He beat Tony Ferguson by decision. And he beat the tar out of Edson Barboza.
So we're talking about one of the greatest lightweights of all time, right?
Well, he lost to Khabib, and he's lost 3 in a row. And that's a weird thing with Michael Johnson. He lost to Josh Emmett by knockout. And by now, you're probably thinking, well, okay, Josh Emmett has a ton of power. Michael Johnson was beating Josh Emmett until he got knocked out. And that's easy to say, too, but it was late in the fight. Michael Johnson is the most frustrating fighter in the world. So he fights Stevie Ray, and you're thinking, man, Michael Johnson's getting off to a pretty good start. And then he doesn't.
Just stops.
And then Stevie Ray wins. And then he's fighting Thiago Moises in the most disappointing fight I've ever seen in my entire life. He beat Thiago Moises easy in the first round. Thiago Moises goes for a takedown in the second. Michael Johnson goes, well, all right then, I guess. I won't really fight this.
I'll give this grappling thing a try.
And Thiago Moises submits him because Moises, one of the most accredited Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts you're going to find in this division.
Weird how that works, isn't it? You get taken down by a BJJ black belt and you get submitted. Michael Johnson, frustration really just is the first thing that comes to mind. Because again, when it's right, it is right. You've got a southpaw, really heavy-handed boxer who's got phenomenal hand speed, a really good wrestling, offensive and defensive wrestling game, and decent cardio. The version of Michael Johnson that we've been getting, though, and really, I always use the person's nickname when they're good. Like, Michael Bisping was the last guy to fight the Spider, Anderson Silva, and we've just seen Anderson ever since that. Michael Johnson should have got rid of that nickname immediately after the Khabib loss. And I don't know if that loss just took something out of him, and it's really weird because you can't always point to a single fight that has completely changed someone's career. With Roy McDonald, you can look at, I always look at the second Robbie Lawler fight. You can kind of look at the first Douglas Lima fight as well, even though he won that. It's just 2 fights where he's taking a tremendous amount of punishment. And this is more of a boxing term than it is anything that's used in MMA. But in boxing, we see this a lot, where a guy, it'll be like a corner stoppage, his corner has to throw in the towel, and he's never the same again. Not only is he never the same again, he might never fight again, because it's such a mental hurdle of, okay, I got beat this bad by this guy. Like, how do I ever really get back to the pinnacle of the sport? I don't know if that happened to Michael Johnson when he fought Khabib, but it was such a demoralizing loss. If you go back and watch that fight, listen, a lot of guys have lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Conor McGregor got beat by him. But people can still hold on to the fact that Conor kind of maybe won a round. Dustin Poirier lost him. You guys know how much I love Dustin Poirier. But at least Poirier had a few good transitions. He landed a couple good shots. He still got dominated, but there was at least portions of the fight where you could take a few positive notes from. Michael Johnson landed a punch that, if you ask Joe Rogan, just wobbled Khabib. He's still hurt from that single shot. But when you actually go back and watch that fight, it's the most KGB fight I've ever seen in my life. Khabib holds Michael Johnson against the cage and begs him to quit while he's hitting him in the head. That would change me forever. Now here's the thing. I don't have wins over Tony Ferguson, Edson Barboza, and Dustin Poirier, so I'm not made of the same stuff Michael Johnson is. But when I look back at that one fight, that really set in motion the modern day version of Michael Johnson that we're seeing. And yes, he did have that good fight with Justin Gaethje right after that, of course. But that just sort of cemented the fact that Michael Johnson isn't good when fights get really tough. When you do push him to the brink, it's not that he's going to fold. Because, again, he took so much damage even in the Gaethje fight that it's really insane. But he folds under that pressure. If you can get him up against the cage, when the going gets tough, I don't know if Michael Johnson gets tougher. And there's some fighters who I point to, and I think that's the case. Like, if you make Justin Gaethje really dig down deep and start to fight you, that's when the best version of him comes out. Eddie Alvarez, I would put in that. Tony Ferguson, I would say the same thing about. A lot of these top-tier lightweights and featherweights, like, you hit them, that just sort of fires them up. I don't know if Michael Johnson's made from that same material. I think if Michael Johnson gets off to a great start, he can build upon that. But I do think Michael Johnson, at least throughout this stage of his career, has fallen into a bit of a rut where if you can really make him work hard in that first round, if you can put the fight to him early, he will just sort of let it go as it progresses. And again, we're just bringing up his current record, so I've got to say it right now. His last 2 wins are Andre Fili and Artem Lobov.
I'm going to go through Michael Johnson's record. So he loses to Khabib. He's a minus 155 favorite against Justin Gaethje. He loses. He's a minus 200 favorite against Darren Elkins. He gets submitted. He's a minus 105 favorite. I guess he'd be near even or underdog status with Andre Fili. Beats him by split decision. He's a minus 710 favorite over Artem Lobov. Wins a unanimous decision. I was sitting there cage side.
Closer than you'd like.
Way closer of a fight than you want for Michael Johnson against Artem Lobov. He's a minus 125 favorite against Josh Emmett. He gets knocked out. He's a minus 260 favorite against Stevie Ray. He loses by majority decision. He's a minus 110 against Thiago Moises, and he loses. You see a theme here? He's a favorite in all of these fights, and he's won 2 of them.
And it is somewhat justified, which is crazy. Like, when you think of Michael Johnson, at least when I think of Michael Johnson, the first image that comes to my head is him doing to what Dustin Poirier to what Poirier just did to McGregor. Like, the fact that his highlight is he knocked out one of the best lightweights ever, and then he beat 2 other of the more entertaining and better lightweights ever by decision. He has periods of inactivity, and against a guy like Clay Guida, like what I just said, like Clay Guida, when he gets off to a good start, he's going to do stuff no matter what. And that's what I can be confident about with Clay Guida no matter what. The output's always going to be there. If he's 31, if he's 39, he's always going to be doing a lot. And listen, he got cracked by Jim Miller before he got submitted by him, and he lost decision to Bobby Green. But when you look at some of his other performances, like Charles Oliveira beat him, but Charles Oliveira is one of the best fighters in the world. He beat the brakes off BJ Penn, which all of a sudden might not be the most difficult thing to do in the world. And then, but even the performances before that, like Clay Guida is going to make you fight. And that's not something that I know Michael Johnson's prepared to do anymore. Like, if Clay Guida goes out there and he is able to chain his wrestling with his volume, I don't think Michael Johnson has that one big punch in his arsenal anymore. So I don't know if I think Michael Johnson can knock out Clay Guida. Because in my head right now, that's how I look at this. Can Johnson KO Guida, or can Guida just do enough to make it work for 15 minutes?
That's the thing. I mean, you look at Clay Guida's last win. That was against Bobby Green. It was on a 2-fight losing streak. Green beats Guida, then he beats Venata, then he beats Alan Patrick, and it's like, holy crap. Clay Guida's going to the top. This guy is everything, and then he loses to Thiago Moises on Halloween. So for Michael Johnson, where's he at in his career? Because again, I agree with you. We've talked a lot more about Michael Johnson than we have about Clay Guida, because in the fight that Clay Guida had against Bobby Green, well, Bobby Green had really good takedown defense, and his boxing was on point, and he won that fight. What's Michael Johnson good at?
Exactly.
Everything that Bobby Green's good at. They're like not a carbon copy of a fighter because Michael Johnson doesn't do the shoulder lean. But again, they fight very similarly. I mean, they're both halfway flat on their feet, but they have all right movement on the feet, but they're both flat. They don't really move the balls of their feet. Michael Johnson's a good boxer, and he throws a lot of combinations, and he has speed. So does Bobby Green. And Michael Johnson has good takedown defense, and he has good takedown offense. Bobby Green has good takedown defense. Not really the most offensive with his takedowns, but
he's surprising with him.
He's all right. He's all right. So I would say that's a very good comparison. Green beat Guida. Can Johnson beat Guida? Well, this is MMA math, and it doesn't really work out that way. So let's have a look at the odds quick, because again, Michael Johnson's always a favorite. In this fight, Michael Johnson opened a minus 350 favorite. He's now minus 219. Clay Guida opened a plus 285. He's now a plus 175 over on best fight odds as an average. The Tapology picks, because it's always interesting to kind of look at the odds and then look at what the fans are thinking. 1,203 total votes, 79% Johnson, 63% decision. Best version of Michael Johnson beats Clay Guida. That's what I think. Yeah. That's what I think.
But here's the problem. I haven't seen the best version of Michael Johnson in like 6 years. It's been a while. Like, you can't rely on Michael Johnson to be the fighter that you once thought he was. And listen, I have this problem with a lot of fighters. Like, I'm not a big Tyron Woodley fan, but I have friends who are big Tyron Woodley fans, and they sent me, hey, Tyron Woodley's fight Vicente Luque. How do you think that's going to go? I've watched a lot of Vicente Luque fights, and I've watched a lot of Tyron Woodley fights. Tyron Woodley doesn't like to do things, and Vicente Luque hits very hard. I know how that fight's going to go. You kind of have to forget about the fighter that the person once was, and you have to look at them in the present day. I think 39-year-old Clay Guida is going to beat Michael Johnson. Not a sentence I ever thought I would say, especially not on camera in front of other people, but I do like the overall work rate and activity from Clay Guida. I just can't rely on Michael Johnson to do enough to win 2 out of 3 rounds, and I don't like him to win by knockout, especially in this stage of his career. So I'm going to pick Clay Guida. I like him as an underdog on this card, but really a lot of underdogs seem to do well against Michael Johnson. But no, I'm going to say Guida probably by decision.
I'm going to go Johnson by decision, and the reason is I think we're going to have a little bit more volume on the feet, and as cheesy as it might sound, and this is not good for reasoning, but it's just a bit of a premonition. We get rid of the menace, we're going balls to the wall. This is the Michael Johnson train, because really, this is your last chance. I mean, you've lost 3 fights in a row where Josh Emmett knocked you out. You lost a majority decision to Stevie Ray. You lost to Thiago Moises and got submitted. You lose to 39-year-old Clay Guida. You're probably on the outs. And at 19 and 17, if you lose, Bellator, PFL, you fight Anthony Pettis. Like, what are we doing here? So, for me, Johnson, again, I like the takedown defense. I like the volume on the feet. For Clay Guida, again, he's always doing something, but Michael Johnson, I would think, should be able to beat him to the punch. If Clay Guida goes for a takedown attempt and Johnson does the old, I'm going like full sprawl out on the cage, you can't take me down, well, then Michael Johnson should have some success. But if this is the Michael Johnson that just decides to go absolutely brain neutral, then he will lose to Clay Guida, and I'll look like a donkey. And listen, it's happened. So, again, you want to talk in terms of confidence on picks? This is probably the least confident on the entire card, and the fact that Michael Johnson's a minus 219 favorite over Clay Guida is laughable.
No, I couldn't agree more. Again, I know what I'm going to get from a 39-year-old Clay Guida. He's still going to do the same stuff. He's going to be active. He's going to have the head movement. His hair is going to be going all over the place, and he will combine his wrestling with his boxing. With Michael Johnson, I could get that really good version, or I could get the version who just kind of stands still and reacts to what his opponent's doing. Unless he can hurt Clay Guida early on in this fight, I just think Clay Guida is going to build and build and build as the fight progresses. I love Guida by decision, honestly, especially as an underdog pick.
Matt, I'm really looking forward to this fight. You're going Guida, I'm going Johnson. It's going to be something that happened,
it will
probably, but we'll see what happens. We got a great co-main event. Frank Yeager taking on Corey Sandhagen in our main event. 2 guys that like to bang. Julian Lane would love this fight. We've Alistair Overeem taking on Alexander Volkov. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, man. As we always say, let's get into it.